Hello. You're about to watch an hour-long uncut interview that Veriax and I have done with the creative producer Victor and the lead designer Michael over at Once Lost Games. They are working on the Wayward Realms, an AI-infused RPG, which could very well not only be the resurrection of the fantasy sim a la Daggerfall of the 1990s, but could be the Skyrim killer upcoming. Please do enjoy. Like, comment, and subscribe. These guys have come to a very small channel such as mine to allow me to ask the questions of this game that I have been simping for months now. So please do enjoy. And do go and give them a like and subscribe yourself. Here we go, gentlemen. Thank you for coming along. Michael, Victor, welcome. For those of you joining us, the chap to my right on the screen there, or as it might be left, I don't know where rights and left is, Veriax, old school Elder Scrolls Let's player that has agreed to come along here. Victor, you are I have already forgotten. You are the creative producer. Lotus,
that is correct.
Michael, you are the design team lead for the Wayward Realms over at Once Lost Games, and this is a game that I have brought up on every stream that I'm a part of, not just on my channel, but on things like Nerdcognito. I brought it up to the Dungeon Delver, who sadly couldn't be here today, and I have been simping all over the internet for your game, not only for free. But I have backed the Kickstarter. I've got my Wayward Realms mugs. My wife has her favorite hoodie now is a Wayward Realms hoodie. She's been modeling that for a while. So I am I'm not even bought and paid for. I am the worst kind of fanboy here. So Veriax, I need you to hold me back.
I will. Yeah. I hadn't heard about this until Jack introduced me to Wayward Realms. Probably about 2 months ago now, and I'm kind of in the bracket of like I'm an old school gamer who's I started with Morrowind, and I went back to Daggerfall and played that. And you guys are very much part of the Daggerfall, so I'm interested and I'm looking on it, but yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on it, if you like, and we'll see what you guys say. So I've got a couple of questions going from that. So I'm not hugely into it, but I'm interested, which I think would be quite a proportion of people who have sort of come across this, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally describes most people that have sort of run across this. Right now, we do have a really dedicated following, but for the most part, like, it is a very ambitious game, and there's definitely a lot of like questions that people have, doubts, skepticism, and that's all perfectly healthy, and we welcome that.
Well, very nice. Well, should we start with the first question on the little notepad here, which I think was yours, Veriax. If you wanted to go, if you've got that in front of you, do you want to go ahead and ask away?
Yeah, it's quite a common. Is it the scope one? Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, because obviously it's a very big game, as Daggerfall was a very big game, and so I'm just wondering what the motivation was to have such a large scope. Like, wouldn't it be better to start maybe with a smaller scope and then build on top of that? Like, does the scope of the game alter the way you've designed it? Does it delay it? And what does it bring to players that they wouldn't get in sort of a smaller scope? And by smaller scope, I'm not saying a small game, but just a smaller game than, I think it's twice the size of the UK, or
2.5 times, isn't it?
2.5 times, yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, scope is one of the big, like, major pillars of our design. And I do want to say, like, really quickly, like, starting off with a smaller portion, we are kind of doing that through the early access, because the early access is just set on our starting island of Ijar. Right. It's 140 square kilometers. So it's about modern game world size, right? So we're not throwing everybody into the deep end, including ourselves, right away. We're gradually easing into it and then like expanding out from there, right? Expanding the systems and making it bigger. And that sort of allows us to make sure that everything's working like we want it to, because yeah, we want the big scope, but we don't want the emptiness of like Daggerfall, which was really more of a constraint of the technology and the time that they had back then. So, we want to take that and improve on it. The reason why we want that big scope is we want it to feel like a real world. A lot of the modern RPGs that we have now are theme park RPGs, and theme park is not a bad word. Not at all. It's just the description of what it is. It's a small world where you can go to each location, and at each location there's something waiting there for you to discover, some kind of set piece that plays out, some kind of scripted event, right?
Yep.
And while that's great and fantastic, and we enjoy those a lot ourselves, it's a great way to tell a narrative. What we want is really that simulation. We want you to feel like you're in an actual world, and that includes that big giant world, cities you can get lost in. You'll have to ask for directions. You'll have fast travel, but like that simulates traveling for weeks at a time, because the way I like to say it, like if Frodo had to go take the ring to Mordor in a modern game, it would have been an afternoon hike.
Yeah.
Right. We want that epic journey. We want it to feel like you've been on epic journeys, not just small hikes across a tiny world. So, and Michael, if you want to add anything to that.
I don't know. You kind of hit the highlights. I was going to mention theme park games and stuff like that, and it's not that those other formats of modern role playing games are bad in any way. I mean, I happen to own a couple versions of a certain game that ends with, which is numbered 5 in the series. Just saying, I may or may not own a couple things, and I enjoy the theme park. It's always good. Our game is trying to capture again that real world, and the map is a big part of it. Having distance between stuff is meaningful in gameplay, both in terms of walking it, because I was saying it somewhere else, was having the emptiness gives meaning to the content. If you actually have meaningful distance, those things are happening at locations, or those locations themselves have a little bit more meaning to the gameplay experience. And that really emphasizes like the map size itself. In terms of scope of game systems, it's also like interactability with all those things.
See, this feeds into sort of a part of another question later down the list, but I'll sort of slide it in here. So the journey, the Frodo journey, it would be an afternoon walk in modern sort of hit the fast travel and go. We've seen that there is travel by sea and travel by land. We've seen the horse in the gameplay trailer. We've seen the ships. There has to be obstacles, whether that be the environment or enemies within that environment. Does the Wayward Realms sort of host itself to survival-like mechanics? Do we have to sort of plan our camps and our sleeps and our food and rations, such as in old school D&D, or are we simply just horsing our way up a mountain like the 5th game in a certain series?
I guess the best way to answer it would be that, and it comes down to our design philosophy, is the Wayward Realms, the tagline is a grand RPG, is like the title. Internally in our design team, we also use the phrase fantasy life simulator is another term that we use. And for me, those are interchangeable. Like those mean the same things to me. And in the fantasy life simulation, does counting ration bars contribute to the fantasy? Is those questions like that. I bring up examples like that a lot when we talk about our system. So the design intention at this point is that we're going to be balanced in the middle, that there will be some impact of like managing your resources while you're traveling, the primary of which is time. Time is a huge resource that you need to engage with, because things are so far apart. You need to get places,
like that, I
do
suppose.
contracts. Right, that's one resource, but also the other resource like food and water. There's always been discussion of whether or not how granular do you want to be, like how much do we need to manage that information, or those elements for the player to be aware of, or could we just snap it down to money? You have so much money and you're burning it as you go, right? And really, there's different ways of approaching it. It really comes down to what do us as the design team want to kind of have the player focus on. If it is micromanaging rations, that's cool. I played stuff like that where you need to do things like that and it's engaging. But again, does it actually contribute to the fantasy life simulation aspect, or can we abstract that layer to make it more allow the player to focus on other things during that fast travel? So where we're kind of falling right now is that we're not super deep on survivalist systems. Like we're not going to be counting hydration. We're not going to be counting.
Yeah.
We do count food. Food helps. And again, a lot of this stuff is kind of as we're designing the game, as we're moving up into the early access process, right? We're kind of finding our footing, but also going to end up finding like what players like and don't like. If we get a fun of feedback,
sort of find the balance between the
Yeah.
granularity and the
with the
lubrication.
players, because we could very well get a situation where like players like I want to count food ration bars. This is we need to do this, right? Anyway, so I almost lost my train of thought. So it's for us, it's we don't really want to throw the player off these things, right? So we want to be able to have the the food and water and rest is not necessarily super needed to simulate the fantasy, but is things you should be doing to help kind of smooth out your journey. So so it really is like we're not leaning to hard survival mechanics. It's more simulationist on the.
I'm reminded of Daggerfall's fast travel system, where you're selecting inns to go and stay out along the route. So that's the sort of like the gold management is sort of like that. I take it
like that. Yeah, you pick up resources and stuff like that. It would be, and again, the fast travel we kind of want to. We want to have it grounded, that you're kind of moving through terrain. Obviously, on Ijar, it's going to be a little bit hard because the island is fairly small. But when we get to larger tracks of the game,
you say fairly small. How big is that fifth game in a series? Is a whole map? Isn't that about the size?
It's about the same size. It's about the same. Which is funny. Because where I grew up on on like a little island on a river, in Canada here, and that my home island is about a third of the size of Ijar. So I have some conceptual understanding, but no, really, like I grew up in feel and then like in terminology of Skyrim.
That's cool.
So I do understand Ijar a bit. So anyway, on Ijar, we don't really have it too much because everything's so close. But the idea would be that you don't just go, I'm traveling all the way across the map as a guy. I'm going to travel here and then here and then here. I kind of work my way through because we kind of want to. We don't just want to leap across the whole map. We want to keep you grounded along the map.
You want to meet people along the way.
So it's a bit like leaping from star systems in Elite Dangerous, I guess, in a little way.
Well, the less favorable comparison, Veriax, would be leaping from star system to star system in Starfield, which also had that line, guys, of emptiness means something. Now, I've put 100 hours into Starfield. It is by no means the best game in the world. It is very much a switch your brain off and play kind of game. But one of the big issues, and I'm one that likes to find isolated planets where nothing is. But if I'm on a fantastical journey, it's a completely different mindset. So I'm hoping that there is, if I'm traveling for a day, is a bandit going to pop up from time to time, or is it going to be more every week of travel there might be an encounter?
It's going to be more like in terms of like the beats, we want to keep it more like day, hourly, stuff like that. That's the kind of the time frame we're aware of. But also, it might not be bandits. It may be some cool travel on the road you want to talk to. Like, it's not encounters are more than just beating people up. It's maybe encountering someone interesting that kind of sends you on your way or add context to your journey.
Traveling merchant that I can maybe exchange rumors with. They've got information further down the road, maybe.
Yep. It's things like that. Like it's a little more, again, grounding, because like when you're walking the road, you're not going to be slaying bandits.
This does lead in. This does lead in actually to the second question quite nicely, which I think I will just. So the grand scale of the scope, it might be front and center of the design philosophy, but how far down does this extend? To what extent are the relationships of my character's life going to be simulated? In the gameplay trailer, it was implied that established relationships lead to quests, but how static is this content, or does it emerge naturally via your virtual game master? One of the examples that Veriax and I kind of came up with when we discussed the game as the Oblivion remaster was releasing was, let's say, going vis-a-vis Daggerfall, we buy ourselves a building in a city, and we decide we're going to store cargo in there before we can take it to another city to try and trade it for a better price. Will there perhaps be a generated NPC in the city which is a thief that might want to try and break in and nab some of my goods? Or is there going to be a sort of a tale of wives gossiping about the countess? And then, we can maybe go and look into the situation there and how granular does the simulation get? Because the grand scope, like the weather systems look fantastic, the ships in the storms look fantastic, but if you really want to get into the role playing, how granular can we get with these NPCs?
Well, part of that answer is sort of depends on our time and budget and how granular we can get, right? Because obviously we can always continue to add more and more details to thing and flesh out systems more and more, but there's a time when you just gotta, ship a game, right? So but design wise, like we have the system set up to where we can have a lot of granularity into it. For instance, like our NPCs are designed so that any single one, doesn't matter which one, like just random NPC off the street could actually come to play a bigger role in your player's story via the VGM and our quest lists and stuff like that, where, they can bring them in later down the line, as part of a quest, or they have a quest for you or things like that. And the more you interact with them, the more that VGM is going to prioritize these characters in your story. So it has a lot of granularity in that sense. I did want to comment, like you were talking about, like having thief characters steal your things. That's something we sort of want to avoid, like as part of a quest where you might have the ability to go get it back immediately, then fine. But like just having that happen to players just seemingly at random is usually more frustrating than it is fun or
I forget people aren't as masochistic as I am.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Oblivion's Radiant AI, which was very ambitious when it started, but they had to dial it down because they made the NPCs too smart. So they bought all the armor, so they wouldn't get damaged and things like that. So yeah, if you make the AI too smart and too intelligent, and then you've got a, say, for example, a player home or a cart or something with a bunch of stuff in it, they're going to go, oh, that's an asset that I can take if no one's watching it. And then it would be frustrating for the character, like the player, like you say, because you've earned that and now it's gone. And unless there's like I say, a predetermined specific way to get that back, you have to start all over again. And while that can happen in real life, there are limits to like how much real life you want.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah.
And it really does kind of narrow down to, again, where we want to simulate. We have even in our, like, our target for the number of NPCs in the game is massive. Like, we have,
like, well, you're talking to scale cities, where bigger than
exactly,
Daggerfall
cities. So in reality, we're not really simulating every NPC. And again, it's really how you approach the concept of the grand RPG, right? Again, it's a new paradigm that we're working into. So I come from a very like tabletop tradition. Like I have a whole stack of RPG books right here off to my side. I occasionally will actually open and look at it while I'm doing game design for the game, for ideas and stuff like that. But and so like in a tabletop game, you're not looking to simulate every NPC, and you're also looking to make events be very singular on the player. Obviously, there's things tracking and running across the game scale. So, for example, the thief looking at your stuff and wanting to steal from you isn't necessarily going to happen, because there is no that thief character isn't really an active agent unless he's been selected by the VGM to then run on something, and that'll be more of a VGM. So it's very much, there's a curation level on top of things of the VGM curating, and the VGM could very well go, I see you're trying to pull off some economic schemes. Let me just spin up a little mini quest and have this.
That fascinates me, because that's
grab and pull and drop in that character, and then there's an actor, and then there's progression, and then you can run it. And then what happens at that point would be very much what Victor was saying, was that it gets taken from you in that scenario, but because it's an active quest on a quest line that you're now intersected with, you can now engage with the content, right? And instead of just being happening, you come back, everything's gone, like, oh no. And it's gone.
And there's no lead.
No, but because it's something that's generated, we can leave in breadcrumbs. Or again, this is part of functionality we got to build into it. But that is something that's handled by the curator VGM level. So
that fascinates me, because as a dungeon master myself, and as a player in other tabletop campaigns, it's like, how well is this going to translate? So that fascinates me. But so the thief, the VGM might do something with that, but in terms of relationships, like, one of the main things that people are going to do is that they are going to want to romance a character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
they are. You've seen the 5th game in that series page on the Nexus, I suppose, and the utter degeneracy that is
I don't
there.
want to. I don't want to look. I don't want to.
People are gonna go that way.
Yeah.
So, but I
So-
also saw that characters die. So go on. I'm sorry. I've gone way off.
No, for sure. No. I'll pick up this because one thing that me and Blake, who's shown up on other interviews, stuff like that, he will be the lead. He'll be the writer's lead. Is we are working on, again, this isn't for EA1. This is something that's a little more further out because it's a little more complex. We're working on a relationship system with NPCs that's a little deeper. And that includes romance, it includes human sexuality, but it isn't the end point. Like every other game, you get to that point, and then that's the stone wall, and there's nothing else
give
going
you
on.
a cooked meal whenever you go and see them, and some
Yeah,
money
or you complete the quest line, and that's it. But that relationships aren't that. Relationships are ongoing, moving things, and not every NPC is romanceable, like based on your characteristics. Like we have things planned that means that characters will engage and be in relationships. A relationship could be platonic, it could be a working relationship, right? Like, we could be talking about the guy you hire to be your bodyguard at one point, and eventually through the course of many adventures, he's like your best buddy. Like it's also on those levels too. But yeah, no, we've definitely thought about that. We've thought about relationships, romantic, and we are planning to have some design that is a relationship system that's a little more meaningful than just getting to back to home base and then you're done. Like there's a little more to that we want to have ongoing process, and that's something we've got to work with in terms of what features we want on the design side, right? What features do we want for that? How do we have it'll be similar to a VGM? Vinci will kind of handle it, but it'll be its own little side properties on its own because it's more related to these NPCs that you're growing as you interact with them. Like that's the other part too. We can have the ability to have using artificial intelligence. We're able to have more dynamic growing of characters because we can just append context, append ideas, and just sentences to it, and have an AI analyze that and build that into a character.
That is what interests me probably the most out of this game.
Yeah,
is the way that NPCs could take part in my story.
Yeah. It could be in a relationship. The other thing too is we can assign them via quest line as well. Like we have the quest system, not like there's player 1, but there's also other slots planned that you can have NPCs because we need NPCs to be enabled by
make
lines, right?
You might not be a mage, you might need some help from a mage, go find one, hire one kind of thing.
Or there's a character engaging in the world separate from you. Maybe not the main character, but
that you've got like I don't know what's a good example of this from you got like a Mazoga the orc or a Serana the vampire that's just kind of they've got their own story they're going through.
The intention is that you are going to intersect it. Like there's things that will happen. Again, this is past EA1, our early access release, but these are things that we're thinking about now in terms of when we're building out the VGM. Like, no, we have built functionality to allow. Like, no, we can have multiple slots for characters. Player is going to be slot 1 or 0, but we have other slots for. You can say, hey, NPC, we can pull them in and have them. Now, again, how detailed that is, we'll see as we develop. But it is something that is very plausible, and like things are more active than just a static, the static theme park game is. We're moving past it because we have functionality that we can pass. We have the technology.
Yeah, so a character could, because if I play this, I'm going to kind of play around, see what it can do, and all that kind of thing. So a player could, for example, you start in the first area, the first settlement, try like never to leave, but make it their goal to have relationships with as many people as possible within that town without anyone else finding out.
You dog, Veriax.
Good luck. No, good luck. You could do that, couldn't you? I know it's an RPG, but
I have designed little landmines for that exact type of game.
Right.
We thought because one of the things we have done when we're thinking about relationships is we literally went in. Okay, what players usually do? What do other games limit themselves in doing, and how can we transcend past that? No, I'm looking forward for you playing the game and you hit that landmine and being, Michael, because I put that landmine for you. So I'm looking forward to that play run.
You'll get a little DM about 6 months down the line from Variax, like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, how dare you? You caught me. No.
I'm not saying I would do that, but people are going to, aren't they? So
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking
plausible
forward.
deniability.
Yeah.
Part of this creative process is like, I can only think of things that people can do. And I do look forward to people actually engaging with this creation once we get it out, and engaging with the design and mechanics and doing things I never expected and laughing at it, because that's great. But in terms of relationships, we have thought about like how do other games do it and what they're limited by, and how we can push, now that we have new technology, push past it a little bit. Obviously, there will be eventually a wall of limitations. It's only a computer after all, but we'll see. But it's going to be a little bit more runway than most games can pull off.
Okay.
Nice. And again, we also I just want to say we also try to keep the player from being the center of the universe as much as possible. So
I very much appreciate that kind of philosophy. I'm fed up of being the Dragonborn or the Neverine or the even the champion of Cyrodiil to a certain extent. Is like, I have seen you in my dreams. Like, I just got here, bro.
Can I ask about some AI kind of preventing some tropes, for example, that happens? So for example, how often are we going to shoot someone's buddy with an arrow, and the buddy's going to look around, not see you, and find, oh, it must have been the wind?
Yeah, no.
Right?
Yeah. So in terms of stealth systems, those are pitfalls that we're aware of and that we're looking at. So if you get too hot in an area, it's not like an area calms down from you acting like a foolish, assassin. Like, there's a little bit of cooldown, and cooldown isn't measured in like 30 seconds. You kind of have to wait a couple days for things to hide down, maybe come back, or maybe again. Time is a resource. That's a resource that we leverage into. If you make mistakes and you choose to do things certain ways, you have to pay. It may not be currency, it may be time on the contracts.
Time to skip town kind of thing.
Right. Does that work in terms of like I steal from a shopkeeper and either I get caught, or maybe like I'm with a shopkeeper and they don't see me steal something, but I'm the only person in there and something goes missing.
Yeah, no, we've thought of that.
Do they suspect me?
Yeah. There's like, I mean, again, this is, I don't know if this will make it into the first early access push. We have a lot of ideas, but the idea would be there's like suspicion. People are becoming suspicious of you. Like, it turns out things disappear when this guy comes to town. We're going to start keeping an eye on him more. So if you keep things go more missing, the little more heat gets put onto you. People start watching you more. Then when they actually catch you, then that's when things start.
We're going to get jump scared by guards.
Oh God!
Halt!
Yeah. No, it's going to be it's one of those things where we're trying to move the simulation from just because we have the engine capability now to be a little more complex. We don't have to fall back on like instantaneous. Like, we don't need instantaneous reward and incentive. Instantaneous. We can be a little more drawn out, and
so
a little bit more.
If we were to do something, maybe through a quest line, maybe as maybe not part of the quest line, but tangentially because of an action we take during a quest, a city, and I know that you said cities can be destroyed. Whether that's still part of the game or not, I don't know. But if we cause harm to a city state via an action we took on a different island, but our name gets back to that city state, and we later turn up, would we suddenly be told no, go away, or would they be keeping more of an eye on us? Would we get would we be told our reputation is a certain way because of a certain reason? Or
that's something we are. Maybe Victor, if you want to always interrupt me, Victor. The idea is that we'll have like your traditional faction alignment system. Like you will see like, oh, my faction reputation with these are not that good. But we want to be able to include the contextual data, either if it's through NPCs talking to you and then referring to events, or if it's just going to be in your journal, like, poor reputation because you stabbed the king, or you like, or like,
there's certain things that the fourth wall breaking is just fine for.
Yeah, it really does come down to, and it's something I brought up before, but it really does come down this genre, this new genre of game, and Daggerfall is a prototype of it. Is that when you're playing the game, you have to have a little bit of it's a little bit on the player to have a little bit of mental game with this, like how to import a little bit of the game run in themselves. Like, how do we tie the threads together? What's the reason for things to happen? Like in Daggerfall, it was very random, but you can still kind of do it. In Wayward Realms, the intention will be we can put a lot onto the simulation, but there has to be a little bit of buy-in from the player to kind of get over the hump, right? And there's a couple places we need them to do that. We can only do so much, and it really does allowing that allows us to do so much more because we don't have to do explicit scripting. We don't have to like always make it explicit to the player. Like we don't have to do a ton of extra coding and extra case use catches to just always explain. We can be a little more abstract and let the player kind of project and build their own little narrative on top of that. That's always a bit of the game. With that little extra layer, it allows for us to do a lot more. For situations like that, we can explain to them why you did it. Go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Not detailed, not exposition thrown into your face, just a little snippet, and the player can add in a little bit of context to that. Like, yeah, I did steal the crown from the king. That probably would explain some of the behavior that's been happening around me. But no, that would be a faction part of the faction system where your impact either on a quest or just you goofing around will impact a faction, and that ripples through, and then the members of that faction will not like you as much. But I mean, an individual person will have multiple factions they can relate to. Some of them, grand, like the kingdoms or local cities, vocational, like local guilds, maybe with like different little like family unit. It depends how granular we can get. We're still investigating how granular we can get with that
without confusing the LLM a bit too much.
No, that's not really LLM. That really also follows that's not really on AI. That's more just or the LLM. That's more just on like how many calculations do you need to do per NPC. But until you start bottoming out, like yeah, we do like 1,000 faction checks on a single MBT. Where really 8 would get you the like you don't need that much resolution, if that makes sense. Like it's questions like that. So how granular can you get is it's a question of really how granularly do we need to be yet still have the actual impact to the player that's experiencing the actual situations.
And I do also want to add, like, going back to just the faction system itself, like, sure, maybe you hurt one faction, you go to another one and they're allies, so they might also feel negatively towards you, but they could also be enemies of that faction, because it's not a black and white kind of thing here. Everyone's got enemies, everyone's got allies, so depending on who you go to after that, like, they might like it, like, hey, you stabbed Duke Movarin, that guy's a jerk,
well
come
done
on in here. Yeah, we like you. So there is that sort of play with it too. It's not always just one-way street.
All right. Veriax, you want to do the next one?
Sure. I've been looking on the on the release trailer video on comments on that to kind of like gauge what people are asking and things like that. I've noticed like a lot of hype and people saying, "Oh yeah, this is sort of what I've been waiting for, and it's the best RPG since Daggerfall, since Morrowind, etc., etc." And finally a real RPG. So I guess the question I wanted to ask is sort of what is a real RPG to you guys, inverted commas, because there's a lot of what's a theme park, what's a real RPG, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that just comes from the sort of current state of RPGs and obviously, like, when you look more in the indie scene, you get a lot more of that, like, of the real RPG kind of thing, where it's really about the stats, about the ability to play a particular role.
Yeah.
That interactivity with the systems. I think too many of the bigger RPG titles we get are just so streamlined. Every character you make is going to go down the same paths and experience the same things and play exactly the same way. Yeah, exactly. So I think to us, it's really about just adding in that depth to all these systems and bringing that back. Like, so when you look at Daggerfall compared to the 5th game in the series that we're not mentioning,
it's not even taboo.
Yeah,
it's in the thumbnail.
It's in Voldemort, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at that, like, it's night and day. It's like so much stuff you can do in Daggerfall, so many different builds, and then even once you're in the game, there's like so many different ways to grow your character. While again, in the other one, you kind of wind up a stealth archer every time.
My favorite genre of YouTube video is Daggerfall playthroughs at the moment.
They're really great.
There's just some of the things that people can pull off that I am not that kind of player. I'm the kind of I am human longsword, let's game kind of guy. But I saw someone. You guys see Pleads for Mercy? Someone made an Argonian mage that couldn't cast any spells. and he managed to complete the game with it. It's how, man, there's some stuff people do there. But again, I'm wandering off on my own little tangents again. You ignore me.
That's fair. To build off Victor, for me, RPGs, a true RPG, is about choice and consequences of choices. That's really what it boils down for me, and that's really been one of the things.
More of the TTRPG kind of.
Yeah, again, drawing it from the TPRPG, and it's really about choices that players make and players living with those choices, and allowing for the least amount of friction to make those choices, if that makes sense. So friction as in mechanics aren't supporting the decision, i.e. they can't mechanically do what they want to do. And again, every game is always going to have that limit because every game is going to have that limit because again, in the video game space, because we only can, program and catch so much, right? But allowing enough choices and allowing enough avenues for choices to allow the player to freely choose what they want to do, and then allowing for the consequences of those decisions to actually be meaningful, looping back onto the player and onto the world that they're living. Right. That to me really emphasizes like the perfect TTRPG in the sense that, or sorry, CRPG in the sense that, the mechanics could be extremely simple, but if you have freedom of choice and depth of consequence, even the most basic mechanics means more, if that makes sense. Now, in the game, we want to have fairly deep mechanics. That's one of the things, like the stats that Victor was talking about also play into deeper mechanics that use those stats in a more full experience. One of the actual many inspirations and many things that we draw on will be more of the immersive sim games from the late 90s, early 2000s.
And that's
those are things that we look at as examples. Obviously, those were RPGs.
That's some archaeology there.
Oh no. I mean, I like things like I used to, obviously I'm not saying anything that's like directly, but like things like System Shock 1 and 2, the OG Deus Exes. Those were things, even though they're very constrained, but you still had freedom of choice and consequences of those choices. Those are examples of that, with mechanics that are fairly broad, maybe a bit shallow in those examples, but fairly broad, that you can have a whole host of things you can do to interact with stuff and then experience those results of those interactions. So for me, that's kind of what the perfect computer role-playing game is primarily less friction of choice and actually having consequences being rolled out. Those are the two kind of highlights for me.
So a quick fire question, just a yes or no. Spellcrafting, yes or no?
Definitely.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
I do like the Spellblade.
Yeah, we have it being built up. Where that's one of the things I work on is spell casting and spell creation.
You really think that'll be in the early access one or no?
Crafting, no, but yeah, it's no. Yeah, sorry to let you know. It is where it's designed. It's just a matter of like I want to deliver system like as designer. One of my jobs is to scope systems and to make calls as to what's actually.
I remember, is it Wayward Realms Radio? I think where that word the scope the scope is a bad word.
Yeah, for Blake. Yeah. But for me, it's a good word because what it means that I can deliver gameplay that's not watered down, busted, or lame. It may not be what we get at this specific time frame, right? But it will be deliverable. Follow up and like we have it designed. It's just a matter of we made the call being if we're going to try to push on this, it's going to be a watered down, not good experience. People are going to get it, hate it, and it's going to ruin what the actual experience is.
I would rather you take your time.
Yeah, we can present something on the first release, and it'll be something that will hint toward. We've also because we the bonus would be because we have the system to make spells design. We use that system manually to build the make spells. We think of things that way. So the things we will present will be a little more robust, a little more experienced. We're also thinking about spells like things that just are janky and break and are fun to play. So not just your standard, here's your 50 damage type spells. Here's things that can like be goofballs and have fun in the games.
I
Anyway,
was going to ask you about jank. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, that's
as
the
much
answer to
jank
that.
as we can get in this game needs to be in the game.
That's the answer to that. It is definitely on the roadmap. It's something it's something we have designed, something we have. It's just a matter of if we push on that, we are going to probably not have something as beautiful as we want it to be when we first present it, because I really want that to make that is something that is not visible in a lot of modern role-playing games, and it's something I think that needs to have a strong first presentation, or it's going to be like, not good. So there are other ways we can present Magic, make them really fun, and we'll give you the toys to even be more granular as we move forward. So.
And there is a possibility it comes in later down the road in early access. But we're not making any promises right now. But
you heard it here first, folks.
It's something we have. It's something we have on docket. It's something that we have. It's just about design and implementation time. That's really it's really like one of my roles as lead designer is indeed looking at that and making calls and like every time I make a call, even on something big or small, it's like shed a tear. Oh no! But what it means is the product we deliver is unified and scaled to itself. Unified, scaled to itself, and we're not running like infinite hype train.
You can't be all things to all men, Star Citizen.
Yeah, well, not necessarily that. Is we can't be all things to all men in X number of month time frame, right? We got to give us as cycle goes on. And the thing is, like, it isn't just Magic; it's a whole bunch of stuff I have queued up saying, okay, this is release, this release, and then we have roadmap, not just a roadmap of individual features strung out that we can keep. Okay, next round, but we can bring this stuff in, right?
You guys have a core game at present, don't you? Right now, you have a core game that you have been able to play. At this point, I'm just going to go ahead and say both of you have made at least one character and got to play. It's a little bit, right?
Not quite
yet. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot of individual systems, and they're only like barely right now getting all put together in the same, I guess, space you could say, right? Yeah. So like our programmers, like they're assigned their systems and they'll be working on them. We'll have progress, and you can go in and test those systems individually.
I did see the little short of the knight whacking an orc.
So right now it's not all complete yet, but hopefully soon. And we're actually working towards getting that at the end of this month. So a few days.
And again, I remember like in a meeting we're like walking through the island and being, it's going to take us like a day to walk the Scale Island. Like, okay, here we go. Like stuff like that. But I mean, it is one of the things that things come together in phases. You bring it all together, and because just the wide breadth of the game, it takes time to smack it all together and make it level, right? Because if one feature isn't really there, it does throw off the rest of it, because it becomes a bit of a hole or a bit of a peak that you have to then, like, it kind of throws it off.
Navigate a little bit.
Like flattening and raising and making sure things level, so you don't have this weird off-tilter experience. Like, that's part of it. So it just means we have to mix it together and then bake it, and that takes a little bit of time. Instead of it being like snap your finger, we can then goof around with what you have. But once we get to a certain stage, it will start like ramping up. So.
All right. Look, Victor, this one's a bit more for you, I think, as sort of creative producer, and because we've I'm thinking about an hour is probably where you guys would be sort of happy at. So let's try and smash a couple of these out. Daggerfall was incredible for many reasons. Among those reasons was the ambient nudity of the game. Considering the amount of those mods, as we discussed before, that exist for games in the Elder Scrolls series, is the Wayward Realms going to embrace the heroic fantasy tradition of sexy sword and sorcery, a la Conan the Barbarian or the Elric saga, or will it seek to temper the pleasures of the flesh? Now, I often come across as something of a pervert when I talk about this kind of thing, but I did an entire show on not erotic fantasy, but erotica within the fantasy genre. My channel is more about fantasy as a genre than it is specifically about TTRPGs, video games. I do books, I do video games, I do tabletop. And one of the grand traditions of the fantasy genre is, in many ways, courtly love. Even Tolkien had Eowyn being described as the fair. You had the beauty contest at the end of the Return of the King between Arwen and Galadriel, between Gimli and Éomer are about to kill each other over it. In Elric, you've got many lovers for Elric. In Conan, you've got Conan being kidnapped by sorcerers for the purposes of breeding. So you've got that kind of thing. I've seen artwork of pleasure houses that you guys have released. I'm not expecting this to be a porn game, but are we going to be a traditional fantasy experience where, as you said earlier on, human sexuality is a theme?
Yeah, I mean, we've always from the beginning been aiming for an M-rated game, right? The real world is an M-rated world, right? At best, sometimes a little spicier than that, but that is the real world. And again, it just comes down to that sort of simulation where we do want these. There is a place for these type of things, including the nudity and stuff like that. Now, Daggerfall was a little crazier with it. Like you just walk into a random
and you get banned from Twitch.
And exactly, yeah, to be surprised, So we do want it to make a little more sense. Like we have those pleasure houses, depending on the goddess, some of her temples might feature some nudity as well. So yeah, it's a mature game. You can expect those themes in the places you would expect to find them.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, it must be kind of tricky to set like a setting in a world that doesn't have like the modern sensibilities that we have now. I think rightly so, but back then there would be far more like less stringent, let's say, on prostitution and things like that, and how much you bring that to the fore, because it would be there, but equally you don't really want to make it a selling point or make a big thing of it either, I suppose. It's getting that balance.
Well, it also kind of depends on the kind of character you're playing, because you are playing like something more like an underworld type of character, thiefy, whatever. Like
you're going to be going through brothels and
right, exactly. Yeah. That's where those like the deals are going down and things like that. So
you see, the storytelling options for like I'm reminded of a specific character in Oblivion in Bravil, the Count's son, who spends time at the skooma house within Bravil. And there's all this stuff said about how he's sleeping with all the addicts there. So it's like I'm reminded of like it's people might not like it because it's dirty, but that is something that adds a certain layer of filth character to an area, and the stories that can come out of it are quite.
Yeah, exactly. Like the stories is really the major emphasis there, and obviously you look at like court life in medieval times, like that. Those were the scandals, right? When this nobleman is has some little things going on the side, right? And so yeah, that's the kind of stuff we want to tap into.
Sort of a Game of Thronesy feel.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it makes for a more realistic, more grounded, more vivid world, really.
Also, it sells copies.
Yeah, I mean, I put I put many large-breasted elves in the thumbnails of these videos.
And again, it's an M-rated game. Where it's not where we're trying to aim low and trying to be a little spicy. It's we're falling into M.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make any qualms with that. And the M rating, we were looking at the ESRB ratings at one point. It's like, oh, we can get away with a fair bit actually. Like we can get we're looking live at one point, just like reminding ourselves what we've gotten ourselves in. It's like, oh, we have a pretty wide breadth here of what we can actually engage in. So I mean, it also it also points to a bit of a maturity of the game. Like you can always make kind of more infantile jokes about sexuality and stuff like that, but it also means like Victor was referring to, we can have tie-in storylines into the stuff and have a little more maturity into it, right? So a little more Game of Thronesy, even though it's not really like you can't really parallel it, but Breaking Badish, like criminal elements. If you're being a thief, you're going to get tied up with unsavory characters and unsavory
criminal elements. But I'm kind of also thinking religious elements, like you said, depending on the goddess. But in the Legend of Drizzt, for example, and at the moment I am wearing a Legend of Drizzt shirt. By the way, he'll be brought up again in a moment. In the Legend of Drizzt, one of his sisters in one of these ritualistic orgies in the Temple of Lolth tries to seduce him. And that is, it's horrific to the reader, but it tells you exactly what that society is about. So there are certain things, and I think an author that is very, very good at this is Robin Hobb. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read any of her works. But where they use sex and sexuality to deliver some really harsh messages about the society that you're seeing, or some very guttural message. Maybe harsh is the wrong word, because it's not necessarily a bad message, although a lot of the times it is. But no, I'm happy to hear that the mature rating is what we're aiming for. Veriax, do you want to get in there with one? Anything particularly nagging at you?
I'm wondering about so you release early access, and then you'll patch the game obviously as things develop and things like that, and people will get in there and they'll play it and they'll break things and they'll find things and all that kind of thing. So I'm curious, because it is a single player game, so it's not like you need to balance it across multiple peers in the same place. So someone finds, like, you combine this spell with this spell and it creates like something that's completely broken and unbalanced. Would you patch that out, or would you say, hey, fair enough, you found it, people can use it if they want, but if they don't, then leave it, just on a purely sort of mechanical level, like they can win combats really easy with this combination if they want to, sort of thing? Would that be a problem, or something you want to get rid of, or not?
Well, I think our point of view is we want to let players have fun. If they can figure out ways to break the game, we're going to be amused by that. Like, I think that's great. Like, have at it. It's your game. You're playing your story, whatever you want to do, have fun with it. Now, if it's something that like breaks quests or whatever, like, just destroys your game, then yeah, maybe we'd have to fix it so your game isn't destroyed. But otherwise, like, yeah, we love seeing exploits and things like that people can do.
Yeah, and to build off of that is, for me, as long as we don't degrade the choice options, like as long as it becomes like not one of these things where everybody always takes the combo because the combo is the best, and it allows it, for some reason, somehow is the thing that you can do pretty much almost everything, i.e. nothing's that to me becomes a bit. Pardon? Yeah. You don't provide, and I way to describe, you don't converge into the stealth archer mage subset on the graph, right? As long as we don't as long as it's one of those situations, I'm totally fine with it. Because again, we want players to play and explore the game. And yeah, if it's a bit busted, being a bit janky and a bit busted is endearing, not even a problem, right? But just making sure we don't tip into those issues. The other thing would be, if it is something that people do a lot, the patch to me wouldn't necessarily be to stop it, but to make it more like, make the consequences more dire. like make you no. You can do it again. You can do it. There is no friction for you doing it. There's no friction in the choice. It is, I'll make the consequences, because this becomes like, it becomes really easy to do combat. I got to turn the knob over here to make you pay.
I'm going to request that you put yourself into this game as an NPC that kind of pops up, like in The Witcher 3, you get the tax collector. and I want you to just say, right, the consequences of your actions now is rocks are going to fall. That would be quite funny.
But it'd be more like consequences in like long-term negative impact. Like if you're using magic to just break stuff, the Inquisition's going to heat up your Inquisition on top of your you know what I'm saying? Like it's things like that. It's not the immediate consequence. It will be making sure that if it's easily abused and people funnel into it, that's fine. It's more going to be like making sure that the long-term consequence of this easily exploitable action actually like has long-term consequence, and we can put that in, right? So that's where I would intersect with the game, not necessarily prevent it, but to make sure it becomes balanced in the long term, more narratively than anything else. So
and also further down the line, we do want to have mod support. So like people are going to break the game in one way.
In every way, or fix the game, or fix
am I going to be able to prompt the LLM directly to kind of say I want certain things to maybe play a role?
I mean, the things with the LLM interface is that there is, I think it was explained on Wayward Radio, is that there is no feasible way for us to obscure that system.
I remember,
without it being instantly unobscured within 5 minutes. Like we take 3 months to obscure it. It takes 3 seconds to unobscure, because
waste of time.
Right. So there's no point. There's no point. But also, we don't want to do that. We want to have, it's going to be just as open as anything else. The prompts are going to be open. The infrastructure that uses the LLM, like the thing with the LLM is that the LLM isn't running the show. It's the VGM's running the show.
It's passing information. And
the VGM uses an LLM as a tool for specific behaviors and specific processes. Right. It will use other pros. We talk a lot about the LLM, but there's other things, the VGM, like queries. There's databases and logic trees and queries, and it uses the LLM for specific queries and specific things it needs to perform, right? Those are going to be very open. People can tinker with those prompts extremely easy. They can add to them. They can build infrastructure on top of it. We're going to design it and build it in the way that focuses on the thing we want the VGM to do. If people want to expand that functionality, that's awesome. I that's part of it. Like, that's one thing that I kind of look forward to, is how people like, look at this mod actually fixes all the prompts to be even better. Like, okay, well, you got
Nice.
me. Pro Michael prompt engineer got schooled in day one, right? You know, but you know, it is going to be very open. Like, it's going to be very clear as to what prompts we're using, and very clear as to which model we are using as well. Because that's the other thing too. We will use specific model because that's going to fit our case use, but there's nothing stopping people from dropping in a different model. And
yeah.
Now that could break it because different models respond to prompts differently. So it may break the input-output chain. But yeah, it's going to be very open, and that's by rote, and it'll be very.
It's going to be glorious.
Yeah. But you can do stuff like that. You can make your own prompts to send in for quests. You can interact. You can probably break the dialogue system too, probably as well, and do God knows what with these characters. But yeah, so.
Yeah, well, talking about like creating your own prompts and quests and stuff like that, like the original conception for the VGM came from Julian, and it was sort of like wanting to be this like something you could type in just a story. Like you write out a story, you give it to the VGM, and it makes it into a quest. And that's sort of like what we've got now. But just like saying like that was sort of one of the original ideas going into this, and it's kind of neat to see how much it's evolved from that.
No, I'm looking forward to tinkering with it myself. Look, we're running a little low on time. Veriax, do you want to ask one more serious question before I ask my meme question?
Sure. Okay. You mentioned there's a lot of systems in terms of like stats, like in Daggerfall, and Jackie mentioned that there's a Igonian mage that couldn't cast any spells, but they can still finish the game. Is that possible in this game? Or, for example, could I play a Garrett, a master thief, who is terrible at combat but really good at stealing things? But basically, how dangerous would it be to sort of mess up a character? Like, a lot of modern RPGs are very safe in that no matter what you build, you can still kill everything, no matter sort of what your build is. But so you don't really want that, but equally you want the player to be able to circumvent or get through the dungeon or the quest or whatever in whatever way.
Well, and I'll let Michael go into more detail on this, but like I think really the core basis on keeping players from messing up a character is just make skills that are actually useful, right? So like, sure, you can make an underpowered character, a character that's not very efficient at what you're trying to do, but as long as those skills do mean something and you can accomplish something with them, then you're not blockaded from accomplishing quests, right? And that's sort of our quest approach as well. Is we want to give you an objective, and then you as a player decide what your character would best handle that, right? And what you have at your disposal to accomplish it.
Right,
but
hacking back a little bit to the immersive sim Deus Ex type thing, where you can play a character without any combat skills, but just talking about Deus Ex now, you can hack that console, you can talk to that character, and then you can get in that way rather than going on all the guards type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It will be the way the quests are not linear. Do this step, right? Because those are very geared towards very specific build types, right? Like the Mages Guild quests are very focused on magic, right? Now, obviously, that will still exist. like the Fighters Guild will still want you to kill things, so you have to engage on that level. But the idea would be a quest is not tied to specific routes of completion. They are things these are objectives that you achieve, and how you achieve them is up to you. Again, very little friction in how you approach situations. Again, if you're if you're a thief with poor combat, you shouldn't be walking into the Fighters Guild to request a combat. You know what I'm saying? Like that's player choice at that point. You've gotten yourself into that own situation.
Consequences. I'm getting a theme from Michael.
Yeah. No, there's a choice there. But also, because we have the VGM, and the VGM will be aware of the player's stats, right? It will be inherently aware of what the player is capable of. We can quantize, we can numerically quantize. We can also qualify make the qualities of that information that we can feed into an LLM or feed just to the general VGM system. Because we have that, you can build weird builds or unconventional builds, and they'll still be valuable because the underlying skills that you're engaging with are still useful. Stealth, the subcomponents of stealth, combat, dialogue, magic, other things that we have, those are useful and you can engage. Now, it won't be conventional. You may have to do things uniquely different than what you would normally would do in a usual build, but they're still viable. And as long, my hope would be that we can have a very wide breadth of variance of character and still be enjoyable. And really, to me, that's it. They may be unoptimized, they may be inefficient, but because we have the help of the VGM to kind of like push quests and variables towards the player that is slightly more attuned to kind of how they're built out, it won't be a hard slog to get through. One character I always think about is the mad scientist playthrough. I forget the name.
I've heard you bring it up before.
Yeah, that build is very interesting because he literally builds the hardest character humanly possible in Daggerfall, like starting off with just language skills, maxed out, nothing else. Yet by the end of the game, he becomes an absolute god because he just any enemy that appears in his field just pacify. He just the entire dungeon's become pacified, and he's like, yeah, okay, walk in, take the item, okay, bye guys, and walks. It becomes like a bit of a joke. And like, yeah, like there's a scene there where he's
charisma
resting.
max.
Oh yeah. There's a scene where he's resting, and he rests. There's always encounters, but like either he pacifies them or they fight each other. Like he's like, yeah, I'm sitting here just like watching it happen. Like
fight.
Like we in Wayward Realms, my hope would be the VGM will go, okay, I'm seeing a social dialogue focused character. I'm going to lean encounters and lean quests towards that being more facilitated, so you play into your character a bit. There's a bit of that. Obviously, there's a bit of variance. We'll maybe throw a combat in here, maybe throw a stealth in there, right? A little bit of variance, but there'll be more understanding of where the build is, and that it'll help facilitate those choices. Help make, again, that friction is reduced of the player choosing what they choose and how they want to choose it, right? So that to me, I think is the one bonus of our builds, is that we can accommodate weird builds both by structurally and having like some guidance on top of that. So.
Okay, and then just on the back of that, there, I'm just kind of curious because in Morrowind, which is my favorite game, if you're in the Mages Guild, you have to be good at magic to accelerate to advance in the Mages Guild. Like it's a hard fact. Whereas in a certain game that's 5 in the series, you cast one light spell and you're in, and then you don't have to cast a magic spell for the rest of that quest line. I think you have to cast a shield. But so, in light of what you were just saying, would it be possible then to just use a Mages Guild? Could you get quite up in the Mages Guild in this game without casting a spell?
No. There will be prerequisites to factions. Joining factions and engaging.
And this goes back to the simulation of it. I
suppose. One the VGM was pushing you in a direction, seeing how you are and pushing you in a direction, or giving you choices, like the more geared towards you. But even if you were just like a pure, just like a fighter brute with a big old warhammer and a big shield and lots of armor and no magic whatsoever, you walk into the Mages Guild and be like, oh hi, oh you want to join the Mages Guild? That's cool. No.
Okay, yeah.
No, you may be able to engage with the Mages faction on different levels, but not as a membership, right? There will be prerequisites to join and then go up through that. That was kind of thought through because I believe that is a Daggerfall thing that you kind of need.
I think
you need some. We looked at that, and that makes sense because it allows for the simulation in the sense that you need to at least have some skill for them to like you. You cannot join the blacksmith guild or whatever without any knowledge whatsoever. You need something, right? So
and we do also take it a step further as well, because we do have some like race specific factions. So if you you just might be completely cut off because you chose the wrong kind of character at the very start. So you're not doing everything. Exactly.
No, and that's the thing. You're not doing it. Like one build cannot give you anything. One build can give you just a sliver of the game.
You're saying this. All I hear from that is I can have my orc racism validated completely. Which is the only good orc is a dead orc. I remember one day you posted on Twitter or Once Lost posted on Twitter an orc death knight, and I commented on there saying, when I said the only good orc is a dead orc, this isn't what I meant.
Well, that's what you're getting though.
Look, we're coming
the monkey paw curls,
we're coming up on the hour or over the hour. One fun question before we wrap up, and that is, and this is a question that has broken my corners of the internet lately. All things being equal, all items being mundane, martial prowess only, no magic, who wins in a straight up fight? Drizdoan or Conan the Barbarian?
I'm a Conan simp through and through. I got his back no matter what, rain or shine. Conan.
I did a little bit of research. I looked at I just put the two pictures of the characters up side by side. I'm looking at them like, yeah, I think Conan gets it. If everything else is mundane, there's no like trickery. Like I could just see just like I can just visualize it. I think Conan has the up. I think Drizzy can put up a good fight, but I think Conan mainly also Conan can just take beatings, just take absolute destructive beatings and keep going. I think
I want a refund on the Kickstarter now.
I'm sorry. It's the Conan endurance that can just you can just rip him apart and you can still keep chugging. I think that's
actually,
that tip of the scale. So.
Funnily enough, I don't think I've asked this question to Variax before.
You haven't, and I'm with them. It is Conan. Sorry.
Oh, right. Well, we'll have to have this argument.
Just snap him in
time.
half, man. He would just.
We will have this argument another time. But you're all wrong, right. Chaps. I really appreciate you coming on. You guys are you're working on what I believe is going to be the next evolution of the CRPG. I am a tiny channel, and I think it says a lot that the lead designer and the producer would come onto my channel and talk to a couple of guys that are just like, hey, this looks interesting, or a simp and someone who's mildly interested. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm hoping that I haven't scared you too much, and that maybe a couple months down the line you would like to come back again and we can see where we're at, or maybe after early access is out, because then I can kind of go, look what I did. But I am I'm over the moon with this conversation. So thank you very much for coming, Michael, Victor, Veriax. Thank you for holding my hand the whole way.
Hey, no worries. It's been a pleasure. I don't normally do this, might have shown, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys for having us.
I'm going to press the big red button again now, unless you guys have anything you need to say, anything you.
Buy our game.
Yeah, buy the game. Yeah. Is the Kickstarter still going?
Yes, we do have late pledges still open on Kickstarter. Pledging as a late pledge gets you early access at the end of this year when that launches for our backers only. General public be probably sometime next year. And then you also get a Discord role if you want to show off to friends. So, but actually, more importantly, you do get to give us direct feedback on your experience. So. That comes in handy for both of us.
Well, we can't get more direct than this at the moment. But no, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to press the big red button. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much for sitting through that hour-long conversation. Again, thank you very much to both Michael and Victor for coming to such an incredibly tiny, fantasy-oriented channel such as mine. And thank you very much to Veriax for holding my hand through the entire experience, because God knows I needed someone with a clearer head than mine. I am very much fanboy-addled at this point. If you would please like and subscribe, it would help the channel an awful lot. I am very close to being able to monetize my weekly stream, Talking in the Library, which enables me to pay for Restream, which I use to provide your midweek fantasy fix. It also means I'll be able to focus more on producing this sort of content, as well as more interviews with authors, hopefully. I do have a line to the author of the Dragonlance Chronicles, which I still need to get through finishing my review series on. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a lovely day, and do go and check out the Wayward Realms Kickstarter. Goodbye.